Columbus Blue Jackets have been quietly moving up in the standings, and Jay Forster of Locked On Blue Jackets is here to tell us about their playoff chances and what to expect from the Jackets at the trade deadline.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On NHL podcast. So glad you could join us today, and thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. The Columbus Blue Jackets have been playing some winning hockey lately, and Jay Forster of Locked On Blue Jackets is back with us to discuss that. Jay, how have you been?
I'm good. I've been enjoying watching the Blue Jackets play, which is not something I've been able to say a lot this season. But yeah, it's been a fun month.
Yeah, I mean, 7 out of 8 before the recent loss to Carolina, and a game that's going to start shortly after we record this on Sunday evening. First of all, let's get to this. How are they doing this with all of their goalies so banged up? That's a pretty impressive feat.
Yeah, so when we got the news that Korpisalo was injured, I was like, right, this is going to be a lot of work for Elvis Merzlikins. We've got a really tough schedule coming up. I believe when he was injured, we had it was Buffalo, Buffalo, and then the next games were Toronto, Florida, Carolina, and then Pittsburgh, who we're playing tonight. And I was like, man, that is a tough schedule of games, especially, Merzlikins has historically struggled against Florida, Carolina, and Pittsburgh. And then he got injured. And then there was the news that our third string goalie, who's been out injured, I think since December, he's had hip surgery, so he's done for the rest of the season. So we are down to our fourth string goaltender, which is a guy that a lot of people may know, JF Berube, who has been the AHL backup most of the season, who he hadn't won an NHL game since April 2018. I don't know that he'd been in the NHL since April 2018, and he was our starter for the foreseeable future. We had Jet Greaves as our backup, who was split time between Cleveland in the AHL and the Kalamazoo Wings of the ECHL. Undrafted player, signed a contract literally at the start of this week, or I think it was a week ago today, he signed so he could back up. And I was like, you know what, this might as well happen. Let's do it. And then Berube won. He won his first game against Buffalo. He was really good. I think he made 28 saves of 31 or something against Buffalo. And then I was like, you know what? House money. We're playing with house money at this point. And then I was like, let's see how he does against Toronto. And then he made, I think, 33 saves against Toronto. And then he made 39 saves against Florida. And we won both of those games. And I was like, what's happening? How is this happening? How is he doing this? And, he's clearly taking advantage of the opportunity that he's been given. And I don't necessarily think it's a team thing because, as previously mentioned, he's faced over 30 shots in each game he's played. And some of those, he's made some really, really good saves. And he has only been okay for the Monsters this season. I don't think he's been like a game changer or anything. So for him to come up into Columbus and play like he has been, incredible. And even in the game against Carolina, which they lost 4-0, I think he made 46 saves that game. 46 of 50 saves, so it's not like Berube is the one that's hanging us out to dry here. It's the team's hanging him out to dry, which is so frustrating because when you're getting goaltending like this from JF Berube, like, you have to be taking advantage of that. And to the team's credit, they kind of have. They were 3-1 while Berube was in net, which was way better than I expected out of this stretch of games. Like, of the stretch of games, I was like, right, if we win 2 of these games or get 4 points out of the eight possible points this week, I will be happy. And then, currently, I believe the Blue Jackets are at 6 out of a possible 8 points. And then it'll be, depending on the, the pending and results of tonight, it'll be out of 10 points. You know, so 6 out of a possible 10 points is A-okay in my book. Blue Jackets are pushing for a playoff spot. They've pretty much been hanging level with Boston. The loss against Carolina and then Boston beat San Jose last night has bumped Boston's chances up a little bit, but the Blue Jackets are at 10 points out of a playoff spot right now with a lot of hockey still to play.
And a few games in hand on Boston as well. What can this team do to cut down on the scoring chances they've been giving up? I mean, 50 shots on goal, great game, 46 saves from Berube, but you said more than 30 shots on goal in all of his starts, more than 40 in a few of them. What can be done to cut down on the shots against?
I mean, it doesn't help that Zach Werenski is out at the minute. He took a hard hit from Wayne Simmons against Toronto on Monday, and so he didn't play the previous 2 games. He's not in the lineup tonight. So, and he plays a lot of minutes for Columbus. He's been our number 1 defenseman all season. He's done a brilliant job. I think he's been one of our MVPs. He went to the All-Star game, and so him missing in the lineup is a big loss. We're also missing Jake Bean at the minute, who has been quietly really good for the Blue Jackets this season. And so, having those 2 guys out the lineup means that we have to rely more on, guys like Gavin Bayreuther and Gabriel Carlson, who I don't necessarily have a problem with them being in the lineup, but the loss of guys like Werenski means that they're getting a lot more ice time than probably they should, I think. Andrew Peeke played 27 minutes against Florida. I don't think any defenseman should be playing 27 minutes because I have a lot of thoughts that are definitely for a different podcast about, load management in terms of defensemen. I don't think anyone should be playing that much time in a game. But, when Andrew Peeke is your leading ice time scorer, I think that's probably got something to do with it. So getting Werenski back is number 1. And the second thing is just play. It's tough because I like the style of hockey they're playing at the minute, but it's a very un-John Tortorella-like style of hockey. Brad Larson plays. You can see elements of Tortorella's coaching in his game, but it's a very young team. They're going to make mistakes, and Larson seems content to kind of let them make mistakes because that's how they learn. And so I don't necessarily think there's a plan in action to get those scoring chances down. It's more about, getting a save when you can and learning from the mistake so you don't necessarily make it next time. So it could be an interesting game tonight against the Penguins, who are, doing very, very well in the Eastern Conference this season. They are, I think, they have a legit shot at the Cup this season, so it could be an interesting game, but I don't see the Blue Jackets making any kind of structural changes to become better defensively. I think this is more or less what the Blue Jackets are this season.
Last question before we let you go. What do you expect Columbus to do at the trade deadline?
Oh man, that's such a tough question because they're in that horrible spot where if they buy, they could make the playoffs, but they could also not make the playoffs, and then they've given up assets to not make the playoffs, but on the flip side, if they sell, then that's them basically saying, well, we accept that we're not going to make the playoffs, and it's a write-off. And so it's tough. Jarmo Kekalainen famously does not like the trade deadline. He's talked a lot about how he wants to build the team through drafting and development as opposed to going out and spending at the trade deadline or picking up big free agents. I feel like every year there's, the Taylor Hall free agency sweepstakes, I feel like, or the Taylor Hall trade sweepstakes, I feel like the Blue Jackets were in on that right up until they weren't. And I think it's that Jarmo Kekalainen just doesn't want to do it that way. So this is a very long-winded answer to say I don't think the Blue Jackets do anything at the trade deadline. I think they probably will stand pat. They don't have a ton of assets to part with at the minute. Korpisalo is an unrestricted free agent, but he's injured at the minute and also hasn't been great this season, so I don't know that there's a market for him. I could see Max Domi getting moved if the price is right. I know me and some of my friends have been talking about we would like him to go to Toronto and get Toronto's first-round pick from them. I feel like that's a move that could happen. I think there's a market for Max Domi. Apparently, teams have been calling on Alexander Texier, and Kekalainen has basically said, no, we're not interested in moving him. But he's another name that has kind of been thrown around. Jack Roslovic is another name that's been thrown around as a guy that could move. And I think there's an outside chance that Patrick Laine gets moved. I don't think he will because, well, his recent hot streak, which we didn't even get a chance to talk about, 21 points in 11 games, snapped on Friday against Carolina. But I think if the price is right, I could see Kekalainen moving him. If he thinks, okay, we can't sign him to a reasonable long-term deal, then we're just going to get what we can for him. And, if you look at the kinds of similar packages that have been dealt for players like Laine, I think there's a chance that Kekalainen could get, a haul for him. So I think potentially Laine moves. I think it's a very, very, very small chance, but he could potentially be a low-key trade deadline acquisition for a different team.
Jay, why don't you tell our listeners and our viewers where they could find your podcast and where they could find you on social media?
So you can find Locked On Blue Jackets wherever you get Locked On NHL. We are on all audio podcast platforms. We are soon to be on YouTube, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye out there for Locked On Blue Jackets. If you want to follow the podcast on Twitter, it's at LO_Blue Jackets. If you want to follow me on Twitter, if you want some Star Wars opinions and some dog pictures and pictures of what I made for dinner mixed in with your hockey opinions, then you can find me over at _Jacob Forster, which is JAKOB FORSTER.
All right. Jay, always a pleasure to have you here, and thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always happy to talk Blue Jackets.